Hey everyone, it's Carly Hall, and today we are going to do a tutorial on how to create a rhinestone template. If you're following along over on Instagram or TikTok, you know that I've been playing with rhinestones for the last couple of days, and now it's time to teach you what I've been experimenting with. So if you're not already following along, go check out my Instagram and TikTok because I'm always doing it behind the scenes, so you kind of get a sneak peek of what's coming up on my YouTube channel. Okay, let's get started. For my silhouette users, if you want to do this tutorial, you need Designer Edition. You'll notice I have Business Edition, but if you have a silhouette, portrait or cameo or curio, a Business Edition license, a Designer Edition license is all you need. For my Cricut users, you do need Business Edition because we will be exporting this as an SVG and bringing it into Design Space. So if you don't have Business Edition, pause this video, click on the video description, open that little window so you can see all of the links, and I will put a link to Business Edition. Right now, you can get it for $62.99. I'm not sure how long that price will last, but normally it's $100 and it's a one-time payment. You never have to pay for it again. It's not a monthly commitment or anything. So download that, upgrade to Business Edition, and then you will have all the tools. Okay, so once you come back and you have Business Edition, we can get started. For this tutorial, I'm just going to use a font. So I'm just going to start with the letter H like I did in my Instagram story. And we'll resize this pretty big so you can see it here, but we'll resize it in this tutorial. You'll choose a font and you can go through your fonts or use wordmark.it. That's my favorite way to choose a font. So we'll go over to wordmark.it. And this will show you all of the fonts on your computer. So I'm just going to type in the letter H and click enter. And my Flash player is enabled so I can see all the fonts on my computer. You'll want to look for a font that has a lot of straight edges and not that many curves. More curves, the harder it is to see what your rhinestones will look like. So you want some straight edges. It can be a serif font like this, but you just want a lot of straight edges and not a lot of curves. So you can scroll through your fonts and pick a font that you like. I kind of like the serifs on this one, so I'm going to do this Baskerville font, and we'll test that out and see what it looks like. So we'll come over here, and we'll just change this font to Baskerville, and we'll start here. So once you've chosen your font, you're going to open the Rhinestone panel. If you don't see it on the toolbar, you can come up to Panels and navigate down to Rhinestones. Then this rhinestone panel will open up. It's this little icon, so it looks kind of like a little rhinestone there. And we're going to play with all the settings. So we can outline it in rhinestones, and you can see that depending on the size of the rhinestone, so pay attention to the size that you want to use. I'm using 10SS. And we'll click on that size, but if I had smaller ones, I can adjust it and it will give me a live preview of what it looks like. So we'll stick with the size 10, and we can also adjust the spacing. So if I want them closer together, I can bring them down to 0. I'm not sure why that glitched out, didn't like that, but let's do 0.01. And you can see they're super tight together, or I can spread them out. I've been liking 0.05. I feel like they're close, they're not touching, so my template stays intact, and I think it looks really good that way. You also have the option to do a linear fill, which is my favorite because it just lines up everything so that it looks like you hand placed all those rhinestones. You can also do a radial fill where it kind of works in from the center. My advice to you is play around with the size. So take a look at how big this is now, but if I resize it, it'll add more rhinestones, but I'm not sure if I would ever use a H that's really this big. And right now it's giving me the measurement from the font parameters. So that's not actually the measurement of the H. So if I wanted to get a more accurate measurement of just the H, I could draw a rectangle around it just to see. So it's 8.9 by 8 a little bit less than 2. So I don't have a need for an H that big. My H probably needs to be like less than 2 inches tall. So we'll leave this square for reference off to the side. So I'm going to resize my H, and I'm going to bring it down super small because I do not need a huge H for my project. And I'm going to go back to linear fill. So you can see that if I go this small, I lose that crossbar. So you'll just want to be aware of the size restrictions and just play around with it until you get that look that you're going for. Of course, you're not going to go super tiny, or you're not going to want to go super tiny if your image has a lot of detail, because your rhinestones obviously dictate how big or small you can do it. So I hope that makes sense. Just play around until you have your look, and then we're going to say release rhinestones. And that'll turn everything into its own little shape. And if you are bringing this into Cricut, you'll want to select everything and right click it and just say make a compound path. That will put everything on one layer so that when you bring it into Cricut, it doesn't freak out with all those little circles. So now we have a more accurate read of how big this is. It'll be 2.8 by 3.1, which is a good size H. And then we don't want to resize it, because right now, if I resize it, they're no longer going to scale correctly. So make sure to leave it the size that you have it. And then we're going to add a little bounding box around the edge just to make cutting the template easier. So you'll put that square or rectangle around it and then highlight both and just center those together so that they're aligned nice and straight. Then with both of them selected, you are just going to say make compound path, and that will make this one layer. Okay, so now I'm going to show you quickly how to make a design that's filled, and then we'll bring them into Cricut. So we're going to go to my library, and I'm going to use this wild and free image, but you can use any image you want, and you can see just how quickly you can convert that into a rhinestone template. I just need to click on my rhinestones, and if I want to do an outline, you see how they're overlapping there? Let's adjust that. So I'm going to click back to the no outline, and I'm just going to ungroup this by right-clicking and choosing ungroup, and then I'm going to bring my plus sign down a little bit, or my and sign rather. I'm going to bring my dot up and over just a little bit so that the rhinestones don't overlap. Highlight everything and group it back together. So now when I turn it into a rhinestone pattern, they're not overlapping. Again, you can do a linear fill, a radial fill, but I think I'm going to do an outline fill for this one. So again, you can play around and you can resize this and just pay attention to if you're losing too much detail. Like I'm losing a lot of detail on that eye right there. So this one would probably be a pretty big design if I wanted to rhinestone it. And just pay attention to how it looks. Make sure there's no gaps. So there's a gap right here. It's a little wonky there. So I think I'm going to bring this out just a little bit so that they have a little bit more breathing room, and my E is a little bit weird there still. So use your judgment and adjust it until you have it exactly how you'd like it. And once you're happy, you'll just release those rhinestones. Another really fun feature that I love about Business Edition is it will tell you how many rhinestones this will take. So if I wanted to make this piece of art, it's going to take 712 rhinestones. But as I get bigger, it's going to add more rhinestones. So now it's up to 748. So I just think that's a really cool function in the software. So I like how big this is. I'm going to leave that as it is, and then we're going to release the rhinestones. It may take your Silhouette Studio a little bit of thinking time because that is 747 little circles that it has to convert. Let's select everything and group those together. It might take, again, your Silhouette a couple seconds to figure out what we're doing here. And then we're going to bring a rectangle over again and just center align those together. Right click both and make a compound path. Okay, so now both of these are compound paths, and if you fill them in, it kind of will give you an idea of what that looks like. It makes it look like the rhinestone template, so the circles are cut out of that background material, which is exactly what we want. So you can leave them unfilled or fill them in. If you want them to look like your magic flock, you can turn them blue just so you get a good visual representation of what it's going to look like. So now we have our two images. We're going to save this and bring it into Cricut. If you're using your Silhouette to cut, you'll just send this to cut right from here. But if we are using a Cricut, we do need to save this to our hard drive. So we're going to start with File, then Save As, and Save to Hard Drive. I'm going to save it to my desktop because that's easy to find. The main thing you want to pay attention to here at this step here is you want to choose SVG. So we'll just call this Rhinestone Template and then click OK. I'm just noticing I'm missing a rhinestone right here. I think if I actually cut that, I would make that a little bit bigger because there would be a little gap there. So once you have everything saved, you are going to open Cricut Design Space, make this bigger, and we're going to upload our image. So we're going to click Upload, browse, and find that file that we just created, our Rhinestone Template SVG, and click Open. You can see that it comes in just like we saved it, and then we'll click Save. Click on that to drop it into your canvas and insert it onto your canvas. You'll notice that both of those are their own layers. If we didn't make it a compound path, you would see 8 million different little circles and your Cricut Design Space probably would not be able to handle it. So make sure you're paying attention to creating those compound paths so that they're on their own layer. And if yours came in with a ton of circles, that's probably the step that you missed, and you may just want to weld everything together when you're in Design Space. So we're going to ungroup these, and I just want to check out the size because for whatever reason in one of the last updates, Cricut cannot import SVGs at the right size from Silhouette Studio. From Adobe it's working, but from Silhouette Studio it is not cooperating. So here it's 1.5 by 1.38. If we go back over to Silhouette, if we look at the size, it's supposed to be 3.9 by 4.3. So if we cut that as is, we would have the wrong size. So we need to resize it 3.91. So we'll do the height as 3.91, click Enter, and then it should scale proportionately so that we have the right size. So 4.3, 4.381, 4.382. Okay, pretty close. I'm happy with that. And then for this one, this is actually too big for cutting. Oh no, it's narrow enough. Okay, so we'll cut this one. The width is 11.022, so we need to resize that to 11.032. So now everything is the correct size and we're ready to cut it. So we're just going to click Make It, and this will rearrange. I'm actually not going to be cutting the full wild and free. We're just going to cut the H. So we're just going to cut this one and continue on and connect to our machine and cut it. So I will do an additional video on how to cut it and what material settings we're going to use, and then also how to brush in the rhinestones and apply them. So hopefully this got you set up to make your templates, and check out the next video to start actually applying your rhinestones. All right, thanks so much for joining me. Don't forget to check out the video description to grab it Silhouette Studio Business Edition, and check out my Facebook group if you're not already in there. I would love for you to join. All right, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.